Today, let's break down all the expenses you may encounter as an Airbnb host, how much to budget for, and any tips on cutting cost without sacrificing quality. I want to thank Crystal for leaving a comment and giving me this idea. And if you guys have any other questions about short-term rentals, feel free to leave me a comment and I can make a future video about that. As you can imagine, there are all sorts of costs that go into running a short-term rental business, the furniture, the cleaning, and even things that you may not have thought of. But it's super important to have an idea of what you're signing up for. And I feel like when I first started 3 years ago, this was definitely my weakness. And I wasn't really able to find a clear, comprehensive list about expenses anywhere. First, before we dive into all the expenses, let's just big picture talk about the different factors that can affect your expenses. The first one is your location. Different localities, different countries have different costs of living. And even within the US, in places that have a similar cost of living, the more touristy areas generally will have this more professional tier of, say, cleaning services because it has a more established vacation rental / hospitality market. The cost of some of these services on the higher tiers might be a lot higher than what you would expect in a different town. However, it may also come with better quality and more reliability, and it fits the needs of the vacation rental owner a little bit better. There's also more room for getting multiple bids from different vendors just because there are so many different vendors to choose from. Contrast that to a non-touristy place like my local market here. I can totally hire a cleaner by the hour for much cheaper, but it's very much on a freelance basis. I have to be a little bit more hands-on. And overall, I found it harder to find someone in a smaller town or non-touristy place that understands the expectations and operations of a short-term rental. The second factor affecting your expenses is the size and value of your property. Pretty self-explanatory. The bigger the place, the more to take care of. The insurance and taxes also go up proportionately. Third is your ability / desire to do some of that work, such as cleaning, landscaping, messaging people manually versus automated. My personal preference is to remove myself as much as possible from the day-to-day, so my cost may be higher than yours. The fourth factor is scale. If you have like 30 properties within the same market, there's the advantage you get from economies of scale. You are better able to negotiate prices for all of your vendors. You can hire the same people for multiple projects, and you can also have dedicated staff in-house that you train, and you pay generally less to folks like that versus hiring someone on a one-off basis each time, which is what happens if you have just one property in the market like I do. You kind of have to go with whatever the market rate is for that service. Number 5 is inflation, which obviously changes every year. As you are doing your calculations and projecting revenue and expenses, you have to assume your costs will increase slowly over time. With all that in mind, let's go through a complete breakdown of all the expenses. Broadly, you can think of them in 5 big categories: property ownership, administration, utilities / basic operational costs, guest experience related expenses, and lastly, repairs and contingency. For the cost of property ownership, this includes mortgage if you purchased with a bank loan. A lot of times we consider this kind of a fixed cost, but if you purchased your property when interest rates were really high, there may be an opportunity in the future to refinance if the interest rates come down. Keep in mind that there are fees associated with doing a refinance, so make sure you're running the numbers to see if it makes sense for you. Additionally, if you purchased with less than 20% of a down payment, you would have to pay private mortgage insurance or PMI, which is proportionate to the value of your house. If after some time you've paid off a good chunk of your mortgage and you are at above 20%, or if the market value of your house goes up, and you can ask your bank to send an appraiser to find out this new appreciated value and see if you have crossed the 20% threshold. And if so, your PMI can be canceled, thus saving you a little bit of money. With property ownership, you also have to plan for property taxes, which tend to go up every year at a pace that is outpacing inflation recently. There may be homeowner associations or condo association fees. I personally try to avoid HOAs in general, more so from a regulatory standpoint. And then lastly, insurance. There's the homeowner's insurance and the extra rider or a separate policy if you want for specifically hosting this house as a short-term rental. You may also need flood insurance if FEMA requires it based on your location. The cost for insurance has been going up like crazy in recent years, so it really doesn't hurt to shop around and get some more quotes. There are so many online marketplaces where you can really easily get a quote within a few minutes. I've tried a few of these places and talked to different insurance brokers. The one I've enjoyed the most is Steadily Insurance, and they are not sponsoring this video, but for the most part, they've been very unannoying. The last time I got a quote was just a quote in PDF in email. It's not like they call me 10,000 times like other places that shall remain unnamed. Another really good option is if you had been working with a realtor in the area, they may have some contacts for insurance brokers that they recommend. And it doesn't hurt to just give them a call and see what kind of quote they can give you. The second big category is administrative expenses. I think of this as kind of the background overhead cost of running this as a short-term rental business. There's the tourist taxes or transient occupancy tax of your city or county or state or all of the above, like in my case. This is generally calculated as a percentage of your per night revenue plus the cleaning fees. There's also licensing. So in some municipalities, you have to register your listing as a short-term rental with the government locally, either the state or the county and or the city. These items are generally fixed cost, and you can find out how much it is on your state government's website. The third thing in this bucket is LLC filing costs if you choose to form an LLC. I can't give you legal advice, and I'm definitely not a legal expert by any means, but it makes sense to set up a separate entity, and even more so if you're working with partners. For this, I just use an online service. I think it's less than $50, and I'll link everything that I'm mentioning below. The filing costs are annual, and so if you are only hosting one room out of your house for, I don't know, like less than half a year, does it really make sense? I am not giving advice, just something to consider and ask someone in a legal professional field. Regardless of your LLC decision, your Airbnb business will need a separate form reporting the profits and losses to the government in your tax returns. If you're working with a CPA, likely this extra form will cost you extra dollars. Or even if you're self-preparing your taxes with things like H&R Block and TurboTax, you will likely have to upgrade to the more premium version that costs more money to include this form. The fifth expense within the admin umbrella is business banking. You will need a separate bank account for your short-term rental business to make sure all your business expenses and revenue is not commingled with your personal finances. For some business banking services, there are fees associated, like fees for transferring money or a fee charged for not maintaining a minimum balance, which is why I'm so excited to introduce today's video sponsor, Baselane. Baselane is an online banking solution that is built for real estate investors and Airbnb hosts just like us. Their banking services are provided by Thread Bank, which is FDIC insured, so your deposit with them is protected for up to $3 million. I think the biggest thing for me is that they don't charge fees for going below a certain account minimum or your routine ACH transfer or returned payments, and there are no monthly fees. As a short-term rental operator, there are just so many transactions coming in and out every single month, and it's important to me and gives me peace of mind to know that even if my account dips below a certain amount, or God forbid I mess up and have insufficient funds in my account, Baselane would not charge me extra fees and add salt to the wound. Right now, they're offering a $100 cash bonus when you fund a Baselane account, so go to the link below and get started. A few more admin things to consider. An umbrella insurance might be a good idea. It protects you as a person from liability, in addition to like the home insurance protecting your house. Any short-term rental specific policy usually also insures the house and the things within the house, but you as a person with liability, that would be covered under umbrella insurance. And usually it's like low 3 digits for the year. There's also all the softwares like dynamic pricing, a minute monitor for noise, a security camera, which unfortunately often is a subscription, especially if you have multiple cameras, your expense goes up for the year. And then lastly, a property management software or PMS. All of the softwares added together is upper 3 digits per year. Personally, I think it's worth it because I value my time and I want to remove myself as much as possible from the day-to-day manual operations. But if you were to cut costs, you can consider, for example, using just one camera and not multiple. That's a cheaper subscription. If you're renting out just a room in your house, you won't need the noise monitor. Dynamic pricing is very hard to argue against because by saving that cost, you may also even it out by leaving money on the table by not charging the most optimal rates. So that one I would not take out even if I were trying to save money. And then for property management software, if you don't mind saving templates on Airbnb and copying those templates over on VRBO and kind of just manually sending those each time, it's not hard, you can do it. And if you're not planning to expand into direct booking, then the value prop kind of goes down a little bit. The next expense is gifts to neighbors, to members of the team, usually around Christmas time. This is usually a couple $100s for us. You can be as generous as you would like, but from a tax deduction standpoint, as of 2025, the IRS limits it to $25 per person per year, but you can add it up. Say me and my husband gifting it to one person, we can add that up to be a $50 gift. The last admin cost I haven't personally done, but it's marketing and spending extra on a website kind of to gain more traffic. I feel like at this point in my business, it doesn't make sense, but for some bigger properties that are maybe like multiple units and almost like a boutique hotel, that totally makes sense to do. The next category of expenses are the utilities and basic operational costs that keep a house running. These are mostly somewhat fixed expenses, utilities like electricity, gas, water, sewage, garbage, internet, cable if you have cable, or any streaming services that you subscribe to, pool and hot tub maintenance, HVAC maintenance, pest control, lawn care, snow removal. There's also smart home devices like smart irrigation, smart thermostat, a Wi-Fi connected door lock, and any other subscription model type things that we've already mentioned, like security cameras and noise monitors. And then there's the cleaning, which happens for each flip or each guest turnover, in addition to having a deep clean, which includes a lot more of the detailed work like cleaning inside the fridge and cleaning out every single drawer and that sort of thing, more than your usual cleaning, and happens maybe once or twice a year depending on usage. Additionally, there's a cost for washing the house exterior. You can hire a handyman with a power washer to just wash everything down, or you can also hire a specific house exterior washing service, the latter obviously being more expensive. For everything within the utility/operational cost, there isn't a whole lot of room to like completely remove one of the items, but I think it is a good habit to occasionally call around and shop around. For example, in our area, there's a lot of different pest control companies because it's humid Florida and everyone needs pest control. It's not that hard to just call around and get a few different quotes and see if a competitor can offer you a better offer, or at least bring that new quote back to your current service provider and see if they can do a discount. An excellent task to hand off to an assistant if you have one, or excellent phone calls to make while you're commuting somewhere. And just to share some numbers for comparison, and obviously as we talked about, many factors will affect whether my numbers will apply to your case. For electricity, water, sewer, gas, all of that together is several $100s a month. We don't do cable. Internet is around $70 to $80 per month. For HVAC maintenance, we have a couple $100s of a maintenance plan that includes 2 visits from a technician. And then additionally, we have to buy filters to switch out every 3 months or so. Pest control is $50, $60 per month, except in the summer months where there's mosquito spraying, then it's closer to $100. We don't have snow removal, and then lawn care is somewhere between $160 to $200 a month. Cleaning for us is $275 for our house, plus deep cleans usually at least twice that amount. The fourth big category is guest experience, and I think of it mostly as stuff inside the house. There's the furnishings, which include the initial ones you buy and any replacements in the future because things do break. There's bedding, linens, towels, washcloths, toilet paper, kitchen towels, kitchenware, cleaning supplies, mostly at a guest level, just to have a spray for a table if they want to wipe it down after their meal. Seasonal decorations, if you're into that. We personally have not invested in this. And then any welcome snacks or packages you want to add. This one is quite hard to budget for because you don't know the level of wear and tear that your guest will have. It probably depends on the kinds of guests you're getting and how durable your initial material is, whether you're buying something new versus already used and it's already like in its 5th year of life. I'll share more about my numbers when we get to the next category because I tend to lump it together with some of the other repairs. This brings us to the 5th category, which is repairs and contingency. This one is another really tricky one to budget for because they vary on a month-to-month basis. Sometimes things just hit the fan, and sometimes really nothing happens at all, and you go months without doing any sort of repairs. That said, this is kind of the framework I would use to think through how much to budget for. For repairs, there's the cost of having a handyman come over. This can range from $25 to $100 an hour, depending on their experience, depending on where you live. You also have to budget for the actual supplies, like if you have white bedding and it got stained and you have to replace it, there is a cost of purchasing the new thing. Or the darts on your dartboard go missing, or the tips get bent and you need to replace them, replacing shampoo, replacing toilet paper, it's just all sorts of supplies. And then there are also like the bigger capital expenses that I like to separate out just for tax reasons. But as an example, appliances can break and you may need a new one. Unfortunately, this year we needed a new washer dryer and a new fridge. I found it very difficult to budget for any of this when I had no experience, and me living in my own house, I use everything pretty gently. So I haven't really broken a fridge, and I don't expect things to have such a turnover. But I think you have to keep in mind when guests are visiting, they aren't necessarily as vigilant as they would be in their own home. They're not nefariously causing harm on purpose. It's just that they're on vacation and they're just like, whatever. You also just do a lot more laundry because with every flip, you're doing all the bedding. And that's like at least 8 beds worth of linens for us already, plus the towels. It's just a lot more wear and tear on the appliances. Anyway, to put a dollar amount on this, a common recommendation I've seen is about 1% of the price of the home. And for us, it's kind of been in the ballpark. We've actually spent less than that despite all our appliance mishaps. But of course, this is also going to vary from year to year. It is a good idea, if you can, to funnel a small percentage of your income from this property into a separate savings account for contingency and repairs so that when things do happen, you're not frantically trying to fish out a few $1,000s to buy a new appliance, for example. My second contingency/emergency expense is I pay weekly to an assistant who is kind of on call for us. We most of the time don't use him and he doesn't come over on most weeks. But if something is needed, say there was one time when our air conditioner wasn't working and we can see on our smart thermostat, yeah, it isn't working, but it's a Saturday night. No one else could come from an actual AC company. Our assistant was the person that came over that at least did some initial troubleshooting. And thankfully, he was able to fix it right there and then. If a guest forgets an important belonging and we need someone to ship it back to them, this doesn't quite fall under like a repair or a cleaning. It's kind of a miscellaneous task. And also around quarterly, or at least like 3 times a year, he would come over to the house and just do a quick walkthrough, make sure all the light bulbs are good, make sure the mail is cleared. Very miscellaneous task, and taking note of anything that needs further repairs. Super helpful to have someone like that, in my opinion. It's well worth paying a small amount just to keep them on call, kind of as a retainer for that reliable person who knows your house and knows you and someone you can trust. Currently, this expense is about $1,300 per year. The last expense is kind of miscellaneous, and it's the travel. Although it's not an absolute requirement that you have to go see your property in person, I love taking trips to the beach house to check on things. There is a lot of value to you getting to experience your listing as one of your guests, so that you can come up with different ways to improve. And you also get to go talk to the neighbors and kind of make those local connections that I think in the long run help your business thrive. Being on site also allows you to do some of the social media stuff that you can save for later to post, or make any video guidebook related things for your house manual, like this is how you make French press coffee, or this is how you light the fireplace and it's a little tricky and this is how you do it. That sort of thing can really enhance your guest stay. With travel, there's the cost of flights, the mileage to get to the airport, any meals you have while you're on this trip, car rental expenses and gas at your destination, parking, and whatever you end up buying for the house. If you visit your property for a business purpose, a lot of these expenses can be deducted from your taxes. Double check the IRS criteria to make sure your trip actually counts as a business trip, and also double check who on this trip qualifies for being there on a business purpose. For example, kids, kind of questionable even if you were to take some pictures of them for social media or for your website. And remember, the meals are only deducted at 50%. Lastly, I want to end on a couple pieces of advice that I think are super important. The first thing is, with all these expenses, make sure you're documenting them, why they are a business expense, like especially the ones that aren't super obvious like travel. Document the purpose that is a business purpose, and make sure you're including your receipts and keeping your business expenses separate from your personal expenses. That's a key piece. The documentation has to be really good. The second piece of advice I have is that as you enter a new project and you're trying to project how much you would have incurred in expenses and trying to budget whether this whole thing is profitable, you can't expect to be 100% correct. There will be unexpected expenses that you didn't account for, and costs can go up or down, and mostly up. There's also going to be times when you try to solve a problem, say call an appliance repair person, but turns out that's not the most cost-effective thing, and perhaps with a little bit of better data gathering from a general handy person in the beginning, you could have saved those specialized repair visits and went ahead with a new purchase of the washer and dryer. This is me speaking from experience from wasting so much money trying to figure out what is wrong with my washer. Remember, you're still learning, so you're probably going to make mistakes. And the conclusion is not to worry more about it. It is actually just to budget for that and assume that mistakes will happen. Make sure your investment still works, even if the cost for one of the years is 5 to 10% higher than your original estimation. Plan for your mistakes. It's okay. I know you won't repeat them because you will learn from them, but don't set yourself up for unnecessary stress by cutting the budget so close. If there are expenses that you incur in your short-term rental business that I have missed, please share them below. I only have my personal experience in a Florida beach house and locally hosting something in Minnesota. So I am sure there are plenty of other things out there that I have missed, and everyone in this community benefits when you share about your experience too. Thank you again, Baselane, for sponsoring this video, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye!